On August 15, 1914, the Panama Canal opened to ocean traffic. The first official passage did not look like a battlefield or a coronation. It looked like a ship moving through locks, gates, concrete chambers, signal houses, dredged channels, and a cut through mountains. But behind that passage was a story of disease, empire, labor, engineering, and sovereignty. For centuries, the narrow isthmus had promised a shortcut between the Atlantic and Pacific. Until the canal opened, ships still had to face the long route around South America or move cargo across Panama by rail. The question was not whether the shortcut mattered. The question was who could build it, who would control it, and who would pay the price. A French attempt had already failed. Ferdinand de Lesseps, celebrated for the Suez Canal, tried to force a sea-level route through Panama in the 1880s. The landscape and climate answered brutally. Rain turned excavation into mud, landslides swallowed work, yellow fever and malaria killed workers by the thousands, money collapsed, scandal followed, and the dream became a warning. When the United States took up the project, it inherited both the ambition and the graves. Theodore Roosevelt saw a canal as proof that the United States could act as a world power. Panama's separation from Colombia and the treaty that followed gave Washington control of a canal zone, but that political victory also planted a long conflict over Panamanian sovereignty. The American project succeeded because it changed the problem. Doctors and sanitary engineers under William Gorgas treated mosquitoes as enemies of construction. Drainage, screening, fumigation, oiling, clean water, and inspection reduced yellow fever and malaria enough for the work to continue. Engineers abandoned the fantasy of a simple sea-level trench and built a lock canal. Gatun Dam would tame the Chagres River and create Gatun Lake. Locks would lift ships up from the Atlantic, carry them across the flooded interior and Gaylord Cut, then lower them toward the Pacific. The canal became a machine made of water, concrete, steel, railroads, electricity, and human labor. That labor was enormous and unequal. Steam shovels bit into the Culebra Cut while spoil trains hauled rock away. Dynamite crews blasted slopes, concrete gangs built lock walls, dredges cleared channels. Tens of thousands of workers came from the Caribbean, Europe, and the United States. West Indian laborers carried much of the hardest work while facing segregated pay systems, dangerous conditions, and limited recognition. The canal was an engineering triumph, but it was not built by machines alone. It was built by people working in heat, rain, noise, disease memory, and constant risk. Opening day arrived just as Europe was entering the First World War, so the canal's debut was quieter than its builders might have imagined. Still, when the steamship Ancon crossed on August 15th, the meaning was unmistakable. An ocean-going ship could now be raised from sea level, carried through an inland lake in a mountain cut, and lowered to the other ocean. Trade routes shortened. Naval planning changed. The United States gained a strategic hinge between the Atlantic and Pacific. Panama gained a world-famous waterway, but lived for decades with foreign control at its center. That is why the opening of the Panama Canal still matters. It compressed distance on the map, but it also exposed the politics hidden inside infrastructure. The canal joined oceans by controlling water, disease, land, labor, and borders. It showed what modern engineering could accomplish when backed by money and state power. It also showed that a shortcut for the world could become a wound for the people whose country contained it. On August 15, 1914, a ship crossed Panama and the world became smaller, more connected, and more contested. Deeper cause of the canal's importance was geography meeting industrial power. The Americas had always offered a narrow crossing at Panama, but oceans, disease, mountains, politics, and capital decided whether that geography could become a working route. The canal changed what distance meant because it joined many separate systems at once. Public health made construction survivable, excavation made a channel possible, locks made elevation manageable, and imperial diplomacy made control enforceable. Each effect depended on another cause. Without sanitation, labor could not continue. Without Gatun Dam, the Chagres River would remain a threat. Without Caribbean laborers, the concrete and cuts would not exist. Without U.S. control of the canal zone, the project would not have carried the same strategic meaning. Surviving photographs, engineering records, worker accounts, and contemporary reports provide the evidence for that chain of causes, even when the source record is uneven about the lives of Black Caribbean workers. Panama's context matters because the Panama Canal is often remembered as a clean miracle of engineering. The real story is more complicated. It was a shortcut, a workplace, a medical campaign, a military asset, and a sovereignty dispute at the same time. It helped merchants and navies move faster, but it also forced Panamanians to live with a foreign-controlled strip through the middle of their country for much of the 20th century. The canal's opening therefore belongs not only to the history of machines, but to the history of labor, empire, public health, and national dignity. Its legacy asks a question that still follows big infrastructure today. When a project promises to serve the world, who gets to decide its terms and whose sacrifice becomes invisible once the ribbon is cut?